Please, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. And thank you to the conference organizers for this opportunity to speak to this audience. My talk will focus on optimizing training approaches and with particular focus on considerations for program implementers. A lot has been said about training. I'll give some pointers on what program implementers need to pick to improve the training. So in this presentation, I will answer the question of why training healthcare professionals is important for HPV vaccination, how training approaches for health professionals should be optimized, and I will highlight good practices and lessons drawn that we can pick from. So to begin with, I think these are not the one.
Sorry?
This is not the one.
He's not able to advance.
Okay, we can go on. So to begin with, it's important to transfer knowledge, skills, and attitudes to ensure that HPV vaccination programs are successful. But HPV vaccination coverage continues to lag behind in many settings, as we have had since yesterday and today, especially in the sub-Saharan Africa. And myths and misinformation have also come through, but also have been documented in several studies. And it's important for healthcare professionals to be better informed and educated on HPV vaccine to reduce their own hesitancy, because if the healthcare professionals are hesitant, then that will be translated into hesitancy within the communities. But they will also be unable to confront hesitancy when it occurs. But also studies have shown that strong recommendation of HPV vaccines by healthcare professionals is key in the uptake and acceptability of these vaccines. So enhancing training approaches for healthcare practitioners can improve these results and the targets that we are seeking to achieve. So what are the modalities for training that we can draw from? Some of these have been mentioned by previous speakers, but for emphasis, we can have physical training sessions like we are doing now, where we have facilitators who are well-informed, well-trained, interact with the other health workers to prepare them and facilitate that transfer of knowledge and skills and attitudes. And that could be on-site where the health workers are involved, and that has its own advantages, but it could also be off-site. The other one could be online training, and that has also been highlighted, taking advantage of the electronic media spaces as COVID has made these more known in recent times. But we could also have blended training, having physical and online interfaces. And so what are the options that we need to optimize training, to have healthcare professionals better prepared to support and promote HPV vaccination? One strand that we can look at is integrate HPV vaccination in pre-service training for all healthcare professionals. And the previous presenter has highlighted this. This requires that all training institutions, all healthcare training institutions, including those training medical workers, nurses, but also we can add on schools so that they get these messages before they complete the training. And that has advantages of having well-prepared healthcare professionals, having these messages that they will build on to promote HPV vaccination. Okay, there is a change of slides, which is good. Yes, And I will tell you in a short while why that change is very good. So it's important that healthcare workers are knowledgeable about the vaccines, but also general immunization, and have good communication skills to counter the misinformation, to counter the hesitancy, to provide appropriate messages to explain why HPV vaccination is important, but also build their own confidence. When we heard from previous speakers, when they are confronted by educated caregivers, it's a challenge. Should it be like that? And that speaks to the gaps within the healthcare training. The other strand that we can draw on is and I think most of the trainings that have happened tended to focus on the in-service training for healthcare providers. And for emphasis, this is to ensure that health workers that are already providing these services have the opportunity to update their own knowledge. And more so when things change, and things change including guidelines. We are talking about the possibility of adopting a single vaccine. So when the circumstances, when the guidelines, when the vaccines change, it's important for to have in-service training. But to make it appropriate, we need to have interactive workshops. Courses that have been having interactive workshops have been documented to improve performance of healthcare workers. So it shouldn't be a top-down kind of approach, but more interactive, building on what healthcare workers know to improve their knowledge, skills, and attitudes. And this can take different levels. It can be a basic training, which prepares participants to acquire the desired knowledge, skills, and attitudes. But it could also be a train of trainers where we have a pool of healthcare workers who are prepared to cascade the training downstream. And that cascading does not seem to work very well from the discussions that we have had. It's incomplete cascading, and that gives gaps in how the vaccine is realized. Refresher trainings have also been emphasized. So again, to update the health workers on when things change, but also as the program evolves, new challenges may emerge, and those need to be addressed and confronted. It could also be targeted or whole site training. And the approaches that seem to be common seem to be targeted training. Have a few health workers, train them, and expect them to promote HPV vaccination. But we also need to think in terms of whole site training, so that all the health workers are vaccine friendly and they can promote it. Need to consider conducive adult learning environment. These are adults, and so we need to draw from the participatory adult learning environments, address the domains of knowledge, skills, and attitudes. So not only knowledge, but a complete outlook on those three domains. The interactive approaches, again, need to be emphasized. And so in the next few minutes, I want to highlight what are the key lessons and good practices that we need to think about to strengthen training programs for HPV in our settings. We need to know our program needs. And we have had through this, the needs of the health workers at initiation and the needs of health workers at scale up and institutionalization are varying, so that then we can tailor our training to the needs on ground. And we can do proper needs assessment, detailed needs assessment like we had in Ethiopia, but it could also be informed by feedback from the caregivers, from the children, but also other stakeholders and research studies that are being done in those settings. Adapt existing curricula, but also update curricula for the training institutions. Strengthen pre-service training. Again, this needs to be emphasized so that before the healthcare workers involved in provision of these services, they are well prepared for the task that they are going to be faced. Provide opportunities for in-service training. So let us not stop at training when we are introducing the vaccines. Let us remember continuous training and engagement to address those emerging gaps will be key for a successful program. A cascade approach, but also joint stakeholder engagements. We've had the role of the health of the schools in this, but many times they are brought in to mobilize the girls, but they themselves also have questions. So we need joint training sessions for the stakeholders involved, but most importantly, also provide information, communication, and education materials with key messages that they can draw on to promote HPV vaccination. Again, whole site training as opposed to targeted training, so that we have more people and have the health facility workers more vaccine friendly, and as opposed to when things get stuck when one health worker has left. Supportive supervision and mentorship will be important. Again, the intention is to check how are things going as opposed to fact finding, but also build the communication skills, build the teams that will address the problems that emerge, and support joint decision making. Link training with micro planning so that the training becomes immediately relevant to those that are going to promote the vaccine, HPV vaccination. Recognize that HPV vaccine uptake is an interprofessional goal, and so we should be out. We should look out for other professionals, but also actively engage professional association. What about the nurses association? What about the pediatric association? What about the one for obstetrics? But also, more importantly, the associations of teachers to increase awareness about the need for vaccination. Yes, I'm coming to an end. Build skills and opportunities for advocacy. That has been highlighted and covered by the previous session, but also encourage and promote integration of HPV vaccines with other services. And that's the reason why I wanted these updated slides. And this poster is from our adolescent clinic. Dr. Sabrina talked about the comic book, but we also run an adolescent clinic where we provide all adolescent services. We need to think in terms of these adolescents to become healthy will require more than HPV vaccine. And it's better when it's provided within a setting that is adolescent friendly. So HPV vaccination is provided, but as an integral part of the adolescent services, as we can see from that poster. And that integration will help us to bridge some of those gaps. So in conclusion, it's important to train healthcare professionals, to promote HPV vaccination, and to appreciate that HPV vaccination is an interprofessional activity, but also we should not stop at talking, but we should also see that interprofessionalness in the training and engagement